So in Overwatch League, I feel like we've been seeing a lot of hit scan players, a lot more than I thought they were going to be originally. Now, I know that there's a lot of great players with great aim, but I thought, you know, dive comp would kind of take this over, and spam comp would kind of destroy these players. But that's not how it's been at all. There's been a lot of very good hit scan players getting into these matches and carrying a lot of games. Now, of course, on more open maps, they will be doing quite a bit better. So today we're going to be talking about Wells on Ilios with Pine, of course, because that's a really open map and he did really well. But you still can play hit scan on most maps. I feel like they are, in my opinion, the most consistent DPS. They can get out the most consistent damage, and they are really safe relatively, because you can stop a lot of flankers with them while also not being able to be dived too hard as long as you have very good positioning. And that's what we're going to be seeing from Pine and from Lynxers this game. For the most part, it's going to be focusing more on Pine than Lynxers, but it will switch between both of them, so I want to talk about where both of them are positioning, where both of them are playing, and then after all of this, I'll just give you guys some general tips just about Mccree in the current season. Anyways, right here, we're going to switch straight off onto Pine. He's just going to play around this corner, and if you watch his gameplay on this map, he's going to be here for quite a while. Standing next to his diva, standing behind her, in front of her, and mainly just making sure that he's next to this corner, next to this wall, trying to snipe people from far range, get any ease, get any right clicks you can get, or if you want to call that flashbang or fan the hammer, and overall just playing very safe and making sure not to die. A lot of the times his teammates are going to be dived quite a bit, but that's not really Pine's problem way too much. As long as he's still getting out his consistent damage and getting out his picks like he did right there, it's good enough for him, and his team can win the team fight. And right there, his team was losing, but Pine was able to just pull it off, bop all those guys in the head and body shot, bop, bop. Unfortunately, he has to reload. I guess he could have canceled that reload with an ultimate and then canceled the ultimate and then shot him, so that could have been pretty cool, but would have been a complete waste. And we see right here Pine with a super early ult, and again, he's going to be going to this corner. During this game, though, we have seen that he hasn't actually had to have that much healing on himself, and that's something that I feel like is an important thing to try to keep just in mind. If you can play a hit scan character and not take too much healing, it makes it that your supports can focus on your tanks so that they'll be able to take more damage, and you play back safely, and then you can just pretty much not have any pressure on you because your tanks are taking all the pressure. If you kind of think about it like that and play smart like that, it is a nice way to go about it. Another thing I want to say is that Pine isn't afraid to use Fan the Hammer. Of course, right there is kind of a dumb way to use it because why not? But oftentimes he'll go for kills on tanks or go for kills that might be kind of risky with Fan the Hammer. I know a lot of people are kind of against that, but it obviously works for him. Unfortunately, right there, Pine does get blown up by Clockwork, but then immediately his res, it's going to switch off to some other gameplay though, but Pine immediately gets a kill, and I think he's going to live for the next little while. Whatever, we're going to switch off to the Zenyatta right here, and kind of just wait on this point. I will be switching between the different characters because, of course, I don't want to just show you only this character. One thing I don't want to forget to mention, though, is Lynxer, who didn't do the best on the first point. He got a few kills and actually got his team up a little bit. Was a lot closer to his team than I feel like Pine was. Pine was more off to the side while Lynxer was right next to his team. But on the second time rushing through the point, it seems like Lynxer does a little bit better. Right here, though, we're going back to Pine because he was popping off in the first point. So, of course, the commentators want to show that. Right there, right click, and then straight into a melee attack on the Winston. Sometimes you might want to actually melee attack the Winston first because that'll break 30 of his armor, and then you can go for your right click, and that might just be nice for you. Or the Fan the Hammer. Sorry, I always say right click because I play on PC. Right there, unfortunately, for the Excelsiors. What? Houston gets to take them out. Lynxer gets to kill one of them, and now it's going to switch to Lynxer's perspective. He oftentimes will go after the enemy flankers right there. Peace out that guy right there. And kind of how you can play Mccree is either as a, not like full flanker, but you know, like a sideways flanker where you go right to the side of the enemy team. Or what you can do is stay right next to your supports and try to protect them. And Lynxer usually is pretty close to his supports. And for the most part, they stay alive for quite a while. Right here, we're going to switch off to Cool Matt, just poking out some damage, doing whatever. Having a good tank, of course, as always, will allow so that your DPS can do pretty well. Right here, Cool Matt's getting on the high ground. One thing I want to talk about, I guess, with high ground and with the hit scan players. Nice pop-off right there with Lynxer. E into headshot. One thing about high ground is that I don't feel like Mccree needs it way too much. It is nice to have high ground, but during this match, they don't really go for it almost ever. There's not just that many good places to get it with Mccree without having to just be really far back. And he will take it right here because he can, but as you see, he just jumps down because it's much better to be in a just backwards position that's very safe across the well rather than trying to just play on high ground really far up and then, you know, hoping that you can maybe just shift away. That won't always often happen. Right here, he's getting heals, consistent heals from the Mercy, you know, whatever. A lot of times I see actually the pro Mercy players not damage boosting way too much, but I think it's because they just want to make sure that if damage does come towards their DPS's way, it won't be too bad. Right there, Pine gets to high noon. That's pretty nice, but unfortunately there is res coming out for the Houston team. They're going to push up again, and it's going to be kind of hard for them. I think that, unfortunately for Houston right now, though, they aren't really going to get way too much. They are going to get the res, and they are going to be able to finish that off. But Pine, once again, is going to be able to get right behind them and pop off on quite a few of the enemies. So that's kind of nice. Gets to bop that guy in the head, goes immediately for the Winston, and nice target prioritization right there. Switches from going for the Winston to the next nearby person, and finally just shoots the person across the street, and then kills the Winston eventually. That's something I guess you kind of want to have to do with DPS when you are playing hit scan, actually, is focus on what target you're going after, as most of the other type of characters like spam comp and dive comp can't do that nearly as well and can't change target nearly as quickly. But DPS, we saw right there with the hit scan, Pine could immediately do that. And that's kind of just how that match went. Overall, Pine got to do a lot of damage. He got to get 2 flanks off, and I feel like that's kind of what you want to go for. If your team is already doing pretty well, you can add a lot of pressure in that way, and you can, I feel like, pop off more like that than just always standing right behind your tanks or right behind your shields. You should still be really far back so you can't be dived on, but, you know, in that way rather than being right behind your tanks and right next to your tanks at all time. But after that, there you go with that gameplay, I guess. Let's just talk about some general tips about Mccree in this new season, in Season 8. It is pretty much the same as it's always been, but it's a little bit different with the spam comps. I'm going to say that when you are playing Mccree, compared to the other hit scan, though, in this new season, make sure to play a little bit closer up compared to Soldier, though. As we saw right there, Pine would walk up, you know, kind of close-ish. He'd still be across the entire way of Ilios, but he'd be on the nearby edge of Ilios, rather than trying to stay way far back on the high ground. You still want to be pretty far, but as Mccree, not nearly as far as someone like Soldier or as somebody like Widowmaker, because if you're too far away, you get out of your effective range and you can't really get any kills. But if you're right up next to your tanks playing like a Reaper, you're probably going to die. So try to figure out a place that's kind of just right in between those two areas. And of course, you can be a little bit more aggro when your flashbang is off of cooldown, and he goes up quite often on the enemy Winston when the flashbang is off of cooldown. But otherwise, you should, again, stay pretty far back for the most part. High ground is something that I feel like you don't have to focus on getting way too much. If you are versus a Pharah, I'd probably try to get high ground a little bit more. It'll force her to be quite a bit further back, honestly, and it'll make so that she can't just push up for free, and you'll always be there. And sure, it might be a little bit more dangerous for yourself, but getting high ground far up, I think, is important as Mccree in that matchup. And against also Junkrat, I think that can be a good idea to either play the kind of sideways flanker-ish Mccree, not full flanker, but, you know, kind of weird flankery type gameplay, or to try to get the high ground so that just Junkrat can't do any damage to you for the most part, and you'll be able to get more headshots. That's often a really good benefit with high ground. But still, if you're in most other situations, you don't have to focus on that in too much. And I guess if you are against a diva, you could get high ground to force her to waste her shift on you, and then you jump off of high ground, and then she doesn't have her shift up for the next fight. That's a kind of mind games that you can go for, I guess, if you want to do that as well. First, Mccree, something else I should say, is that he often would play around a corner, play around a wall, duck behind those. That's just kind of the way Mccree does, just the way he works, because, you know, you shoot, have to wait a little bit, shoot, wait a little bit, shoot, wait a little bit, and if you have a wall that you can hide behind, that also lets you get your abilities up. That's what you want to do, and you should never really just be standing out in the open. You never saw him just standing randomly out in the open. Even when he was going up to get kills, he was next to the enemy's wall, which I guess could be kind of unsafe, but worked out for him really well right there. As far as your ult goes in the season, just use it as a way to mainly scare enemies into bad positions, or just scare them away from the point, get some free time, or I guess just reload your gun if you really want to try to do something cool like that. But don't focus way too much on getting kills, because there's a ton of shields right now still. There's just a ton of shields in the game in general. And there is the Diva defense matrix, which we're seeing quite often. Against Diva, if she is defense matrixing, though, I would just try to waste as much of her time as possible. So just ult and wait a long time, because she's either going to have to wait right in front of you and do nothing for a while as you're getting killed from your Mercy, or she's going to have to try to defense matrix you at the right time. I'd wait a little bit longer, though, rather than just trying to shoot as quickly as you possibly can with those little red heads on different people. If there's a Pharah Mercy in your game, I guess this kind of equates to Pharah earlier, but if there's a Pharah Mercy and the Pharah is just 100% pocketing the Mercy, switch that around. If the Mercy is 100% pocketing the Pharah right there, just kind of ignore them until they get close and try to out DPS them. Mccree can out DPS Pharah if you're focusing on people closer up. You just have a lot more damage per second, and you have a lot more crowd control, because you have a little bit of crowd control. So just try to get kills before they come up close, and then once they come up close, go for them. Don't try to snipe them at far range. That doesn't really do much with Mccree. He can't really get those kills. He just has a little bit too much damage fall off. For reticles, we saw both these players playing with smaller reticles. The Overwatch League does kind of change the reticle to just one same reticle for everybody. But in general, when you're seeing a hit scan player, they always have the small dot reticles. So that's what I'd say to try to focus on if you want to improve your aim a little bit. And of course, you want to have a very small DPI, like 800, and then a sends like from 4 to 6. Anything more than that becomes very hard to hit your shots, and if you have a sends up at like 15, play a different character or lower your sends down and get used to just a lot less of sends. And finally, what I want to talk about is the use of Fan the Hammer. Don't be afraid to go for Fan the Hammer, because I know a lot of people, you know, you've heard from streamers and from players and from everything that if you go for Fan the Hammer, you're just really bad at the game. You don't know what you're doing. But honestly, especially against tanks, it's a very good maneuver that gets out a ton of damage instantly, and it makes it that even if you're getting dived on, and even if you die to the person that's diving on you, you can at least take out half of their HP. And maybe if you get lucky, you can flashbang them, shift, and then go for another Fan the Hammer and take out their entire bar of HP. And you don't really have to risk the fact of, you know, getting stuck by a shield as much as trying to walk back a little bit and get headshots on the tanks. Only go for headshots if it's reasonable, and in a lot of cases, I feel like people kind of take unreasonable risks on trying to get headshots on these tanks, and yeah, just take the free Fan the Hammer. That's kind of what's going to help you the most. But there you go, that's all I'm going to say about Mccree. I feel like he's a pretty good pick, and if you can get good aim with this character, he's going to be worth your while. And remember that you don't need to hit every single headshot. A good headshot percent is actually around 15 to 30%. 30% is amazing, but 15 is even, you know, good enough. So try to do that, and as well, try to focus on not going way too far up without either your tanks or, again, without your flashbang, because you're kind of just asking for death. Because yeah, Mccree's hitbox, it's a pretty good fat one, and especially if you're against someone like a Widowmaker or a Hanzo, make sure to stay extra safe, as those characters are the ones that I feel like have been countering Mccree the most in the Overwatch League. They are still beatable as this character, but against those characters, I guess you might just want to play a little bit further up, especially if you have like a Reinhardt or Orisa, and try to pull out your DPS in that situation. Anyways, as always, guys, that's all I'm going to say about all this. Hope you guys enjoyed just talking about Mccree, and really just anything I can think about this character to help you guys out in this newest season. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like. Comment down below what you personally feel like about Mccree, about Pine's play, or Linkser, or any other Mccree that you've been seeing in this season. If you want to see any more like this, as always, guys, press the subscribe button or hit that notification button. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.